Let me introduce Alan Reddish. Alan's the manager in Athens-Clarke County. Alan was one of the first people that went to China for us, and he was also in last year's group of instructors. And Alan was actually both in Qinghai and in Jiangxi province. And at that time, Alan said there's a couple of things he'd like to share with the next group of instructors based on his experience. And I'm happy that he's here to do that, because I know that Alan will give you the benefit of his experience and provide you some great advice on what to expect and how to proceed.
You promised conversations from the professionals. I'm going to tell you what I really like. I know where you are at this point, so I'm going to give you the real scoop and the real understanding of this. My guess is this. Most of you thought this was a great idea a few months ago when somebody called you and said, would you like to do it? You've been working on your presentation. You're here now hearing this orientation. And you're saying, well, I still think it is, but my gut's telling me I don't feel good about this. Stress level is beginning to go up. I have been there. I know what you're feeling. If we do nothing today, other than I hope I can help relieve some of that stress level for you, I think we've done a good thing. Because what I would suggest to you, you've got at least 3 things in front of you. You got work yet to be done. Some of you, have they turned in this presentation?
Oh, yeah.
No. Okay. That's always stressful, just in and of itself. But you got that to do as part of the work. And also, obviously, you're going to be teaching for 5 days in a culture that you probably don't understand, the language I bet you don't, I know you don't understand, with people you've never met before, many miles away from home. And you're going to be standing in a room with probably the most 3 of you speak English. There's a lot of work that gets you through that sort of issue. So the first thing I would say you got before you is some work to be done, ultimately good work. The second thing I would say is you got some responsibility in front of you. Certainly wherever you go, in whatever place that you are making a presentation, or at least telling folks why you're there, you're representing the Institute of Government, you're representing the University of Georgia, and this one's really heavy. You know, you're representing to a lot of folks who don't ever talk to Americans what our country is about. And that's a pretty heavy burden. And so I would remind you to think about that in all that you do and how you conduct yourself, because it is important. You know, one of the things I thought was great about going here is that, you know, it's a huge country, however many billions of people they have. I knew I didn't have much influence. But there was a handful of people that I know differently than I knew before, which I'll talk just a little bit about too, that hopefully that makes a difference in the big world picture. So you got that. The last thing I'll say that you have is opportunity. I've told Rusty this and some other folks. This really was the second time I went to China. The first time was when I was actually working for the Institute, and we were there for about a week. And it was a conference in which I made a little presentation, and it was a pretty structured visit, and it was, I enjoyed it because I went back. But the second visit, this to me was really the great experience of my life. It really changed my thinking in lots of ways. And I had spent a year in Korea when I was in the military. I've done some traveling, but to experience China the way that we did was a life-changing opportunity. And I would say to you, it is an opportunity, but you've got to get a hold of it. You're not a tourist. You're going to get to do some tourist things, but you're not a tourist. And you're going to experience this country differently than a lot of folks have the opportunity to do so. So I hope you'll will make the best of that when it's presented to you. What I'd like to do is just go through some pictures that I took. We were there about 2.5, almost 3 weeks. We count travel time. I taught in Nanchung the first week and went up to Shenyang the second week. 2 entirely different cities and different approaches to things. Climate entirely different. Y'all gonna be there in June? Mm-hmm. Nanchung will be interesting. Shenyang, you'll leave the windows open at night. It's just going to be wonderful. You're at a good time. That's when we were there. So, good time to go to both of those places. Let me see if I can get this started. Did you get this?
No, you can use the little mouse wheel. Or if it's easier to use the keyboard, if it's just press any key, will be
okay. Good. This is when we arrived. What is this, a 15-hour flight? I've forgotten what it was. It seemed like we would never get there. If you've not done an international flight before, that is pretty demanding. And I would suggest to you a couple things. One is drink a lot of water, and secondly, get up and walk around a lot. I try to get up at least every hour and a half and walk around and go in the back and do toe lifts or whatever, heel lifts, whatever it was, just to keep the blood circulating. That's very important because when you get there, you're going to have a lot to do. I had never slept with eye covers before. I'd suggest you buy some. It really made a big difference to me trying to sleep on a plane. I'm trying to not break sleeping on a plane. So, we have been traveling a few hours and we finally arrived at Beijing, so that's about it. For the next few minutes, I want to talk a little bit about creature comforts of things that are important, particularly the women in the room. I'm sure you all worry about this, maybe some other folks. You know, where do you live? How do you deal with certain things? And we'll move into some other issues. This is the place that we stayed when we were in Beijing. You can see a very nice location. I believe this was an institute as well.
That's right.
I forgot what all of these names were, but you know, nice grounds and very nice facilities. I took this picture for two reasons. One, it reminded me of what day of the week that we arrived. But this is a perfect piece that's in the elevator, and every day they change it because of the day of the week. So, a lot of interesting things they do. Picture's not real good, but this is the room that we stayed in. This was in Nanchang.
No, that's
Beijing.
I think it's Beijing. I think it's beauty. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. They all look pretty much alike.
There's that market across the street.
That's right. I think you're right.
They've been more than I have. But I would say to you, this is the three places that we stayed. The rooms look a lot like this. It's pretty Americanized, except the mattresses are very hard. But it's a very comfortable room. So you don't have to worry about those kinds of issues. I know some folks won't know about this. This was the bathrooms in the hotel. They don't all look like this in the country, and we'll show you that in a minute. But and there's a shower to my left. And if you deal with the water properly, it's a good shower experience. So this is, and I can assure you, Nanchang, when it's hot, you will enjoy that shower. So
you'll take more showers in one day than you ever had.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things, and I don't know if y'all mentioned this, I'll tell me, but particularly when you're in Nanchang, the issue of laundry is a question. Nanchang was very good about that. You can get laundry done, and it's relatively inexpensive, and I would encourage you to do that, particularly before you go. If you're only doing one a week, though, I want you to know that.
Yeah, that's right.
But you can get laundry done there, so you don't have to pack as if you're never coming home again. Shenyang was a little bit more difficult to get that done, but usually you can. I want to go through some slides that talk about the teaching portion of this, which I know this is probably where your greatest stress level is, and you're going to see a lot of slides that look a lot alike, but I thought the more I put in here, maybe gets you a little more comfortable with what you've got to do. This is in Shenyang, and this is, I'm the name of this place again, one of the party schools. It is referred to as a party school, and that's not the same thing as the University of Georgia's party school. This is Communist Party School, which is what they were built for. I'm assuming no longer really used so much for that, but that is the name of the facility. But that was the building in which we taught. You notice they're very good at making the grounds look wonderful. I guess we gave this slide for video, but it really is a very nice place, and plazas, they do a great job on all those kind of things. One evening there was a lot of activities going on out here for us, just a neighborhood showing up. Great. And this is the classroom. Catherine and I were a team. Catherine Bennett, she would teach in the morning at Nanchang, and I taught in the afternoon, and then we went to Shenyang, we changed. To give you an idea of how the class works, obviously you can see very rigid seating kind of environments, but they're pretty mobile, and you can see Catherine is very interactive with the group. Catherine is interactive lots of places. But these are fixed desks. If you're in Nanchang, this is what it's going to look like. There's no way to move those kind of things around. But they will interact with you, and they very much want to be a part. This group was younger than the second group, and their English was better. and they're a little more fun. But you can see Catherine, who is the fun person, got them all going, and so they are open to interacting with you in a way that helps you convey your material. I don't know what the cross fingers are about, but this was some of Catherine's friends. They got to my class, and my subject matter was a little more boring. We didn't do all the stuff. But you see, many times they will stand up to make their presentations. They don't always do that, but they will or give responses back to whatever questions that you might have. And very much want to be involved. This lady had a great singing voice, by the way. I don't know what we were, this must have been the last day because we were both there. There's also usually somebody who's, I don't know whether they're elected, chosen, or they just assume the role of being sort of in charge of the class. I think this, no, this is not right behind. There's always somebody who does that. And if I would ask the interpreter who that person is, it's kind of nice to sort of be responsive to that individual. And they're sometimes it's not the most vocal person in the class. I confirm that. The one I thought was in charge was not. So it's nice to kind of know who that is. You know, in this culture, rank is important. And so they got a class president or whatever they would call that particular individual. This gentleman was probably the most serious person in the class. The way he's fun, the way he stands. But you get the wide range. You get folks who always have something fun they want to talk about, and then you get the real serious students, just like any class that you're in part of. Up in the back. And this lady right here is our interpreter. You'll enjoy getting to know your interpreter. She had a child that was in 9th grade, I think, and she was in school, if I remember right, in college somewhere, but spoke very good English and certainly was a very good interpreter. Now, the thing I would say about the interpretation part is if you've ever worked with an interpreter, it's a little bit of time to sort of get that flow going. The thing that I found to be hard at first was I would get into a subject and start talking and I'd forget. And I had to stop and let the interpreter either catch up or they'd talk for a while and I had to repeat it again so she could remember. But after you do it a day or so, it becomes pretty second nature for you. The good part about it is, at least I found, I would say 2 or 3 sentences, and while she was interpreting, it gave me time to get my brain back in order. So if you can kind of keep that process going, that works. In the same classroom, you notice they got little cards. This one says A. Now you'll see more about this in just a minute, but I put them in the small groups. We did some case studies. We'll see that in a minute. We always have a break. They bring fruit and some other little goodies, and most of it is packaged, you know, little cookies or whatever. And you can get instant coffee and hot chocolate and tea and all that sort of thing, but they'll bring something different just about every day. As I'm going to encourage you in a minute, try it all. I don't remember what that little fruit right there was, but you peel it and it's it's wonderful. Yeah, that's whatever it is. One of my favorite things. So, it was great. So try it all is what I'm suggesting to you. They actually are holding one of the case studies that I used. It was interpreted before we went, so I had it when we got there. And even in this room, which is fixed desks, you can divide them into groups, and they did, particularly this class, did a great job with that. Air conditioning was standing up against the wall. They didn't turn it on. Except for the fact, this is Nanchang where it's hot and humidity. Mosquitoes can be a problem. If mosquitoes get me too bad, they'll close the windows and turn the air conditioner on. The problem is it's pretty noisy, so you got to work through all that. Hopefully, maybe they got a better air conditioner since I was there. Nope, same old one. Once again, working in small groups. Now, we didn't do a lot of this. I'm not suggesting we did this every day, but I point this out because it does give a a break from just lecture, and it's an opportunity for them to learn at a different level. And to be honest with you, you'll learn a lot from just see how they do this. I have a picture I'll show you. I think I put this up mainly because they reported out from the group work. This is their writing on the whiteboard here. This is not me. It is in English. See, he wasn't the leader, he just thought he was. I think this was the guy who was the class president, if I remember.
Alan, what year were these taken?
Pardon?
What year were these taken?
Last year.
Last year.
Last June. I think this was during a break time and we were conversing on some point. Doesn't surprise you, they do like to take lots of pictures. This is in Nanchang. Xining, excuse me. As you can see, once again, a little more fixed. All these things did move around, but we didn't move them around. This class was older, and these were higher level government officials. One of the questions that we wondered about, and I'm sure you've asked, is what is their feeling about the difference in democracy versus it is a communist country, obviously, and do they ask questions, and or are they defensive in any sort of way? And I can tell you, not. I never had a sense that these folks felt like they couldn't say anything they wanted to say in the class, and they did. This class spoke less. Again, it's an older group. Obviously, they probably, their experiences were different than the younger group in terms of being government-appointed persons. But still very interactive. This group also got out and walked in and out of the room a lot more. They were, they were important. They were more important. So they would go out and take phone calls, and I never started with a full class. It was always probably 20% of them missing before you started. But you just start, and sometimes they come in, another 5% leave, and you just move on. That's just the way they do it. Now that wasn't so much the case in Nanchang. This is Dr. Wu. She was our interpreter, and she worked at one of the universities there. In fact, she came to the group, and they came here a few months ago. Very delightful person. I thoroughly enjoyed getting to meet her. Once again, shots of the class.
Did you feel at all as if you were talking to with a higher level group? You were talking below their level, or they already knew, they just didn't know your content. They already knew a great sense of what you brought to the table, what kind of content, or the subject matter?
There was a couple times where I knew that things I was saying, they had already had some understanding of. But mine was a general government. It was like a poli-sci 101 class, and pretty basic level. But most of the material was all new to them. They asked good questions, and you could tell that they were quite interested, and this was not something that they were bored with. So a few times I could tell I needed to move on, but most of the time they were hanging there with me. What I'm passing around is, this was at Xining. I don't remember seeing it the other place, but they published or printed all the slide presentations of everybody in English and in Chinese, and they would bring those to the class, and also took a lot of notes. Again, my slides are a little out of order, but they're back and shown. I want to stop here because see the slide on the board I was talking about, tax commissioner. I would encourage, as you put together your slides, you don't want something you're going to read to them. It's got bullet points, and they'll have materials already. But use the bullet points as an outline to kind of follow with the conversation. I tried to put at least one picture on every single slide. They're very interested in that. So, even American students stay awake better if you do that, or more visual. But I try to put something, even if it's just a guy standing by the stairs. We're not breaking in. Somebody's got duplicated. That one. Let me show you this too. There's two of them. I put this up here to show you, this is their English. They wrote this. I didn't write any of that. So some of them are very good at that. Some of this, when they would do the reports, particularly in the Shanine class, the older group, they did it in Chinese, so you can see both here. The other thing I wanted you to show was a case study, but it had to do with local government, and we never used the word transparency in the case study. They were asked to respond and to come to consensus on certain things. I thought it interesting that they use phrases like, it's important to tell the truth. It's important to have transparency in government. Needs of the citizens were important for the government to follow. And we're talking about a communist government. I would expect this in a probably 101 class. But this was their thoughts and this was their words. This is how they chose to express it, which I thought was very interesting. Got something you have duplicated, but I need to put it up. I'm sorry about that. Before we go to that, I want to tell you another story. We had the opportunity that most of us, our spouses, traveled with us. That's not always a good thing, but I'm going to tell you, for us, it was an exceptional thing. Not just for the fact that my wife also got to experience what I experienced, but tell you a couple of stories. My wife came in and sat in the class several times, just sit in the back, and during break times she would interact with the students, which they loved. They very much want to know something about you, what you do, how you do it, a little bit about your family. I talked a little bit about the beginning of the slide. In fact, one of my sort of starting points was I talked about my grandfather. I had a picture of him back in the 30s or something, and asked them to tell me about somebody who was older, who was influential in their lives. So you heard a lot of interesting stories from that perspective. Almost took too long, but that was the way that I sort of got connected with them. But my wife was there. She sat in the back of the room. She interacted with them during break. She went with us when we went all the sightseeing and any of the social things that we were a part of. She was there. We were the last day, and there's always a little goodbye sort of thing, a little ceremony they do. They give gifts and all that, and they say nice things about you. We get to say a few things. And we were in Nanchun. That's the first one, and that's where we were. No, the last one was Shanine, is where we were. And my wife raised her hand, motioned me over. She said, "Can I say something to the class?" I thought, what does that mean? I said, "Well, okay." I had no idea what she was going to say. She said, "I want you folks to know that this has been one of the greatest experiences in my life to come and to get to know you at the level that I've gotten to know you." She said, "When I was growing up in the late 50s, early 60s in school, my wife is 63. She said, we were taught to fear two groups of people, the Russians and the Chinese." And she said, because we didn't know much about you. She said, "I can remember going in school when we had air raids, we'd hide under the desk, or we'd do all those kind of things." And she said, "I can even remember my older sister used to taunt me and saying, the Chinese are going to come tonight and we'll all be killed." And she said, "I remember one day she told me that one night, I was just crying. My dad had to come in and console me and all that." So she said, that was the basis in which I grew up. And she said, "I can tell you, intellectually I had moved past that years ago. But to get to know you at the level that I know you today has really helped me understand why that was a wrong understanding decades ago." I look around, and Dr. Wu, who was the interpreter here, she couldn't talk. In fact, in the middle of Carol's story, she had quit, and I handed her tissue. She contained herself and all of that. She said later to us, she said, "I want you to know, when I was growing up, I was taught to feel the Americans." And she said, "Your story has just touched my heart." Now, I thought that was a wonderful, one-on-one kind of connection that was not planned. When my wife had not been there, I wouldn't have told those kind of stories. But she did a good job with it, and they reacted quite well to that. And particularly, that women particularly want to know about our kids and all that stuff, so Carol was able to help them with that. Okay, I'm going to move on. This is the teaching part I was going to share with you. Are any questions about what to expect or how they respond? Or I heard you say a minute ago the time frames in which you go. It's about a 3-hour sort of deal at the most. So you've got time to get your breakfast and get ready and all that sort of thing. I would say to you, when you're putting together your slides, what I did was to have a group of slides that's not in the main presentation, it's not in the publication. If something happened the first day, I needed to shift some around and add some more, I would go pull from that stack. As it turned out, I didn't have to do that, but some other folks who went with us did. In fact, Catherine and I sent some slides to our other team in another town, another city, to help them out a little bit. I would just have those in reserve, because you just never know where the conversation is going and the kind of things that might be issues for you to deal with. They won't care that it doesn't match exactly what's in that book that you just passed around. It'll take a lot of stress off of you, I can assure you, if that be the case. And there's no, if you feel like you're moving too quickly, give them a chance to interact with you more. They will, particularly after they get to know you after the first day. Your interpreter can be very helpful. Dr. Wu one time stopped me and she said, I know what you're trying to say. Can I say this differently to them? I said, how would I know if you did? So I said, yes. And there was ongoing dialogue between she and the students. She taught at the university, so obviously she knows how to do that. So your interpreter can be very helpful to you, particularly if you begin to feel like you're either losing your class or you're moving through your material so quickly you're not sure you've got enough material or that they're grasping what's happening. So let your interpreter help you with that, because they're perfectly willing to do that. Anything else? We can come back to other questions later, but for the next few slides, I just want to talk about some of the cultural opportunities. I heard the rest of somebody say your host will plan things for you, and they do. At least hospitality is, they must all grew up in the South. Their hospitality is just unbelievable. And they will have things planned for you. And I would say to you, and I'll show you some things in a minute, take advantage of that. But at the same time, be open to things that are not planned. You change the schedule, and I'll show you some things we did that worked out great. Because that's where another level of learning and understanding will take place. So this is one of those. This is, that's his name now. He was Ma, that's right, Mr. Ma. He was in our class, and he was sort of like, you might think about him as the #2 Georgia Department of Transportation person. That's sort of a good way to look at him. So he was a pretty influential person. He was in our class, and you know, me being a city manager, I wanted to know about those kind of things. So he invited us to go out, and he was going to show us a few things. He had a construction project going. He also ran the toll booths, and they're a little, sort of like it was a loop around the city. So his operation ran that. And this is some of his staff folks, and they very much wanted us to go. Of course, pictures are good. The other thing I'm going to tell you, when you're there, take advantage of the culture. You see me in my hat right there. So feel free to do that. They're quite open to that as well. I'm sorry, these are out of order. I just have to go with them as they are. I showed this. This is right next to Tiananmen Square when we were in Beijing, so we jumped around a lot. I showed this mainly because to point out it is the exception rather than the rule. See, these folks don't even have weapons on. This is not a place that you're going to find armed military people on every corner. That is just not what you find. But I think these were more ceremonial than anything else. But that's the reason that picture. I was very much enamored by the markets, and there's all kind of levels of markets. This one, as you can see, beautiful fruit, quite well done. You're going to see some things you probably didn't want to eat, but I'm going to tell you the food was outstanding. And it is not Chinese food that you've ever eaten before, but it was outstanding. And I'm going to encourage you, because you may not ever get back again, try everything you put in front of you. The only thing that that I ate was a little bit strange, that probably I wouldn't want to get again, was, and I'll show you this dinner. We had the most fancy dinner we went to. They brought a big platter of turtles. They were about this big round, and a sauce. And I said, well, I've tried everything else, I'm going to try this. So somebody was sitting next to me, one of our guests, and I asked them, how do you eat this? Well, and I eat with chopsticks everywhere I went. So first, the challenge was to get the turtle out with chopsticks. And so you'll know you will have to ask the way you eat a turtle is, flipping it over, and then you can spread the back or the stomach bone off. And there's all the wonderful stuff right there. And you start at one leg and you just kind of work to the other leg. It was very bony, and it's a good thing you had gravy with it. But that was the only thing that probably I wouldn't go back to eat. Now, I don't think any of us, maybe they are. Chicken feet sometimes show up in the meals, and I have to tell you, my dad ate chicken feet when I was growing up, so I'd had a few of those, but I didn't eat any chicken feet. But that and turtle are probably the most different kind of things. This is a fish dish. You see how well it's prepared. Again, try it. These are chicken feet. This is the convenience store was in. They had a barrel full of these things. You bring some of these back to your friends and family. Again, this was the market. Goes into the cash register, which is right at the front. Fruits right here, our vegetables right here on the sidewalk. This was the one outside of Beijing. Every morning about 4:30, they would go set up this huge market, and by 9 o'clock, you never know they've been there. This is where everybody came and bought the food for the day. I got some other pictures of that. Food vendors around the markets. We did eat quite well. This was on our way back from the Great Wall, restaurant beside the road. But look at it. Very good, very nice, very well done. I'll show you somewhere we'll have some of those.
Is that Sarah Lynn?
Yeah, Sarah Lynn right there.
That was some of the best cold beer after that Great Wall up those stairs. Oh, that was the best beer.
This is in Nanchang, and this is the room that we ate in every day. So the first picture's not any better. I can't tell what meal this is, but every meal just about had some sort of soup, which is what that is right there, and some sort of rice. And what my wife said was she finally figured out that most of the time the rice was the last thing on the table. And she said, you know, if I didn't really want to eat a lot of other stuff, I could always have broth and rice. So there's always something that you could eat. This is my favorite dish.
Oh, yeah.
This is squirrel fish. I had it the first time I went to China, and I made the mistake of saying to our host, I really like squirrel fish. I think we ate squirrel fish every single day. I was tired of eating squirrel fish. And while it is, it's fish that has been, you see the meat has been sliced, and it's quick fried, and there is a nice sauce that's put on it.
I call that finger fish.
Finger fish. That's me eating squirrel fish with my chopsticks. I put this slide in because I wanted to have an opportunity to talk just a little bit about gifts. This was a time we made a presentation to a gift in, I forgot Mr. Lee, I think was his name.
Lil.
Pardon?
In Nanchang.
Okay, Nanchang, that's right. And we had made a little gift presentation, and I was explaining to him what it was. To me, the most important gifts you need to do is make sure you take something small for your class members. And the trick to it is to have something that you can pack and something that has a little bit of meaning to it, and more importantly, not made in China. The last part is the hardest part. You don't want to haul something back over there. So we had a couple things that worked out great. Lapel pins, I made them all honorary citizens of the city. We did that. And the flash drive.
You have it on the photo. On the
You see my wrist right there?
Yeah.
That really is a flash drive that hooks around. In fact, I carried my presentation with me to be sure I had 2 of them. I want to be sure I'm going to lose that. If you lose that, you might as well play while you're here. But at the end of the class, I gave every class member a flash drive with a presentation on it. They thought that was wonderful. As Athens-Clarke County can read, that's what that says. So those were the 2 main gifts that I gave to both classes. Fortunately, because we have a public information office, we have a few other things that I could take. So I took some other things, and one of the things I took was, you can't tell on this slide, but that's a brass, sort of like a Christmas tree ornament. Actually, it's a rendition of City Hall. So it was a representation of our government. It was inexpensive, it was light, and it was something they didn't have. So those kind of things, I would suggest you begin to think about what you might want to take, because they're going to give you some very nice gifts. I brought something here because I thought it was rather unique. And this is not even investment, but you'll keep the boxes just because they're as ornate as the gifts are sometimes, in the bags they come in. Know what this is?
Clock?
Nope.
Tea.
It's an air purifier. And it has its own little stand. Is this on? I've never taken the wrapping off of it, but it's probably some sort of charcoal base, whatever.
That's right.
But you notice how well it's done. That was one of the gifts. And porcelain is a gift I'm sure that you will get. Notice the box on the inside? That's where they all come. It's just a nice little remembrance of me. You'll get all those, you know. But don't worry about the fact that you just gave them a lapel pin. I mean, that's just the way it is. You can't take, 40 or 50 of those kind of things with you. Okay. This is Shanine, and the food is different every place you go. Shanine was more vegetables and fruits. Nanchang was spicier than Shanine. Y'all have to try Beijing. I thought it was a little more bland, and the food there wasn't as good as the other two places.
I agree.
But you could, there, they did not serve on a Lazy Susan. They put it out for us. We'll show you Lazy Susan in a few minutes. But this was, I think, an evening meal that we had. And there's always some sort of pastry to go with it, or bread to go with it, and fruits. And that was a meat dish. I don't remember what all that was. In that area, lamb was the main meat. So they don't serve a lot of meat. Usually when they cut up a chicken, you don't recognize the pieces. They chop it ways I've never seen chicken cut before. But that is lamb right there, and don't remember what all that was. This was some sort of green bean thing.
Yes.
One day we actually had okra, which I thought was great. And those were a couple of meat dishes there.
Alan, is it lamb or is it mutton?
It was meat, it was brown, and I ate it.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Just curious.
I'm sorry, this is out of order. Before I turn it on, this is a video, but we've got a couple slides of this. This was the most lavish dinner that we went to. And this was held, one of the members of our class, he was a high-up tax official. And we went to his building. And this was certainly the upper management's dining room. I'll turn this on and over and you'll see.
No, that's a
Shanine. Look at that there. That's it. Notice the Lazy Susan actually moves.
So this is also one of our vice directors, Mr. Chen Songhua.
This is Dr. Wu introducing several people. You see him breaking the food, the Lazy Susan.
This is our chief accountant, Mr. My colleagues and me feel very happy to have you here.
When you go to these dinners, unless it's just lunch and you finish class, particularly in the evening, first guest comes, you will be given a place to sit. And they're always going to probably find a place of honor for you. Why, I don't know, because Rusty was here, but on this particular time, I was sitting right to the right, the guy this was his dining room, so I got that place for some reason. I was a little uncomfortable with that, but it worked out. I want you to notice that, I didn't do a good picture of this, but what's on the next one? Yeah, just a good one to look at. There's Rusty over there. Notice the china and the silver, there's some silver there, they did that for our benefit. A well-set table, again, this one was the best dinner that we went to in terms of its formality. Again, the Lazy Susan being in the middle, this one continuously moved. I think I counted 27 different dishes that were placed in front of us in that particular meal. Now, I can tell you, I didn't eat much at 27, didn't just eat all that. Stuff I'd already eaten before I usually passed on because I wanted to try the rest of it. But the food was done exceptionally well. I never got sick. It was just, so it was a good experience from that viewpoint. I want to turn this video on. Well, let's just turn it on there. Pay attention to the TV in the back. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Put this one in because karaoke is such a big thing in China. The TV in the back is not to watch the Braves game. Karaoke probably takes place about every time they have one of these dinners. And so this was a guy who was singing, and we went to an amazing karaoke studio, whatever that they call them there. It's a big deal.
What was the significance of the TV? Just
it's the karaoke machine, so the words would be up there. You know, that's what that was about. I'm sorry these things are out of order, but this, I want to show this to you. The place you saw us sitting around after going to the Great Wall, that dinner started out right here. Catherine went out back, they had the little pond, she gets her net, and she catches her lunch. There it is right there. And there's what it looked like. So you know that it's fresh, and in places where they don't have that, many times they would bring the fish out in a plastic bag, and you know, it's kind of like tasting fine wine. You kind of nods, oh yeah. I can tell that fish is fresh.
Farm to table.
That's right. So that's what he's ended up with. I said I was intrigued by the markets, and again, I'm sorry these are out of order, but this is the same market I was showing you earlier. I want you to see this video of this lady, she's a fish seller. Customers picked it out of the pan over there. Now she puts in that black bag you see coming on the screen right there and gives it to the customer. They go home with it, go down to the market a little further, pick up some other food, take it home and cook it. By the way, this market was in a sort of wide sidewalk area, and right one of the main stores on that little sidewalk area, sort of about where Todd's sitting over there, was a Kentucky Fried Chicken. So that's just how they sort of mixed together. Your host will want to take you to things that they think are important in the country. Museums, statues of people that are important, parks that they think are important. Many of them have military history attached to them, and you should do some of that. I will tell you, they'll take you to more than you probably want to go, and once we got to know our host and all that, we said, well, rather than do that, can we do this? And they're usually pretty good about that. But there are a lot of those to be seen, and this was a nice place to go. We visited that, and I don't remember where that was, but you know, they want you to know about the Revolution. This is Lyndon March and his cousin. This was actually in front of the place that we taught. That's that building I showed you in the background a minute ago. This is a war museum. Beautiful fresco artwork, which is great. But the main thing I would tell you is, once you do the kind of things that they want you to do, get out in the streets. That's where you're going to really enjoy being there. And we were very, very fortunate that in Nanchang, we were given a college student. She just graduated from college. Bay was her name, who spoke very good English, loved the city, and just went everywhere with us. She really was the highlight of our being able to experience all we did in Nanchang. So I said, get out into the streets. Some streets will look nice as this. Many streets will look like this. I never felt afraid to go anywhere we were. Now, you know, we didn't walk out at 1 o'clock in the morning in dark streets, but the thing that surprised me was you were not necessarily the center of attention. It wasn't they stopped to watch you, what everything that you did, and gather around you. Either they've seen a lot of Westerners or they just got more important things to do. So you can just walk around and do whatever you want to do without causing a lot of problems. Streets are full of lots of interesting things. Turtle Cellar, and this little kid thought that was wonderful. These are great people. One of the things that you will want to do in Beijing is to go to the Great Wall, and there's a shot of that. And there's some tourist things you just have to do while you're there. You might wonder how you're going to get there. Well, that's how you get up to the Great Wall. As you can see, there's a lot of walking for this event, a lot of climbing, and I'll point out that ADA rules have never not been there yet, so be careful and wear some good comfortable shoes when you do this sort of thing. Some of the interior sections of the wall. This is how you leave the wall. Your sled.
We hadn't told them about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's part of fun. Part of fun.
Nice.
So you make it back down. Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City is the other places you want to go. This is the People's Congress Building, if I remember right. While we were there, Tiananmen Square was actually closed. There was, for some reason, I don't remember what. So Tiananmen Square actually is over in this direction, just a big wide open area, but we didn't actually walk on the square itself, we were across the street. The country has some interesting challenges for tourists. One of them is air pollution. I know somebody is going to be talking about those kind of things, and particularly in Beijing, and when I was there before in Shanghai, I had the same kind of problem. Nanchang, not so much, and Shenyang, it's wonderful. You can see the sky, and it's just great. But that will happen to you on certain days. The other challenge is that, you know, when you're traveling away from some of the more westernized places, although this is westernized to some degree, restroom facilities do offer a little challenge, and just to be prepared for that. But usually there's opportunities. Again, met some great folks. This guy, we met him at whatever the ancient city we went to.
In Nanchang, probably.
Yes, this city is, people have been living here for thousands of years. He was actually a visitor there, but he wanted to stop and talk to me about his visit to New York, I think it was. But you just never knew who you run into. He spoke reasonably good English, but he certainly wanted to discuss his trip to New York. Again, getting out into the streets to just see how things are done. This looks to me like grandparents and a grandchild. I bet child seats were not required. If you just can no longer eat that good Chinese food, there are Kentucky Fried Chickens and Pizza Huts. And you'll get to probably experience one of those with your host at some point.
Pizza Hut in China is not a Pizza Hut in the US.
That's true. You ought to go to a Pizza Hut. I think a lot of things you'd recognize, but a Pizza Hut's a little different. I said, see if you can make things happen. My wife is an elementary school teacher. She said before we left, if we could go to an elementary school, I'd like to do that. Well, I thought, how tough can that be? So we asked our host, and there's a little hesitancy. I wondered about that. I really wondered about it when I found out that the elementary school literally was across the alley from where we were teaching. So it was right there. It took several days to get permission to go to this elementary school. They had to go all the way up to what we would refer to as State Board of Education, I think, to get us into this elementary school. They don't even let parents come in except certain times of the year, so it's well controlled. But it was one of the highlights of our trip to go to this elementary school. This was second graders, I think. You notice they're all very well behaved. We're in the classroom, where are their eyes? They're watching the teacher. They're raising their hands. They were very much engaged. I probably have too many pictures of this, but this is
How many?
Pardon?
How many students are in that class?
Yeah, exactly. Textbook. You know, the old days of going to the blackboard and doing math problems, still in China. Guess that's the reason our math scores are much better than ours. That's what we're doing. This was an interesting experience. We went out, they had recess. So we went outside and we just sort of talked around and milling around. And I knelt down to talk to this kid, and he hands me a piece of paper and wants me to sign my name on it. So I did. And just by the time I finished, another kid handed me this piece of paper, and I signed my name. And just about the next minute, I was covered with kids. Literally, I had to stand up. I thought they were going to crumple me. And I was a rock star for a few minutes there. But it's just that, you know, they want to be close, they want to interact, they want to know what you know. And they had about 4 questions they could ask you in English, and they all wanted to ask them. Just a wonderful experience to be at elementary school. I had a video which I forgot to bring of this sort of thing, but this was a recess area, and there's a name for this, and the sticks back on the ground, and they jump through, but they all do it perfectly. Gosh, I don't work out. But you remember I told you one of the folks in the class took us to where they do the toll gates. This is the toll gate person. I snapped this picture as we were moving because I wanted to make the point. They told us they trained their toll gate workers on the, I think it was a 6-tooth rule. Tell me what that is. I said, well, first I asked, I said, I've noticed that every toll person has the same movement. They stick their arm out their little window, and they wave you in just like this. Arm goes down, take the money, and they raise their arm, and they take you out. So there's a motion that they have that. I asked about that, and he said, yeah, that's the way we train them. And he said, we also trained them on the 6-tooth rule. I said, tell me what that means. He said, well, we want them to be friendly. They need to smile, so they show at least 6 teeth. I didn't count the teeth, but there was some there. So that's the reason I took that picture. This was the construction site that we went to. They're actually tunneling through this part of the mountain. It's going to be a 4-lane highway. There's 2 lanes here and 2 lanes to the left. Again, back on the streets, you'll see a lot of older people taking care of grandchildren. I think the retirement age in China is somewhere about 55. And one of the reasons for that is to create jobs for the younger population. So grandparents have a lot of time on their hands, and they tend to take care of kids. You know about China's one-child rule. Seldom do you ever see more than 1 child with a grandparent. Which is what this one was about. Interesting how that works, and maybe we can talk about that at some point. But again, just interacting with folks on the street. And this is another example of making something happen that wasn't on our schedule. When we were driving back from the toll booth meeting, I looked up on the side of the mountain, and you can tell right up in here, there's like little caves. This was an ancient home for where the monks lived. I don't remember the name of it. But it was not on our tour. Nobody else's tour, really. And it doesn't look as demanding at this level, but you could see from way from where we were, it was a steep step with straight up steps. And I talked to our host, and I said, can we do that tomorrow? They talked among themselves, yeah, we know this works. So we went there. We met 3 people from Korea, and those and us were the only Westerners or non-Chinese persons at this location. Because of close up to how they lived. These 2 little boys lived there somewhere, and they just followed us. I thought the poses, look at the poses they did. 2 little kids. Once again, I apologize for being out of order, but this is the market again. I don't recommend you buy meat from the market. It's just there. Oh, we're back to Tiananmen Square, and this is Forbidden City. You recognize that picture and all that. Inside the Forbidden City area, that is too. Yeah, this is the ancient village I was telling you about. These big guys live here. That street as well. Outside a few miles, several miles outside of Manchester. But we're back eating again. This is when the Archway group came, and this was Janine. No,
Lanchan, that's Lanchan, yes.
Yeah.
I definitely know what I remember. You notice we're in a different room, much larger table. Again, the Lazy Susan. And this Lazy Susan, you got to move yourself. And the rule is you don't take the plates off and bring your plate to the bowl. I mean, you don't take the bowls off, you bring your plate to the bowl. And I can encourage you not to try it. Another street scene. This was a restaurant just off on the main streets where the locals eat. I did eat in that restaurant. Another thing I'm going to encourage you to do, particularly if you've got a host, is go early in the morning into one of the parks. And they specifically took us, she knew about this park because it was a special one. This was in Nanchang. You'll see all kinds of things, particularly you see these little older adults do for exercise, fan dance. Keep in mind, nobody organizes it every day. Somebody will bring the music and the rest just show up. That's just their routine.
There's your chance, Todd. You can.
I thought this was interesting. The same park, and these folks were practicing writing their characters. But all this is a big brush with water. I think it had a little bit of liquid soap in it. So they would be out there doing all this. And during the day, it finally dries up and come back the next day and it's all done. I guess it was a little cleaner, but you know, they gave us brushes and we didn't know what Chapman's characters were, right? But they're very interactive and answering questions that you might have. I thought this was the best. There's this couple right here. What I would say to you, if you want to join in on any of that, they are pleased. They will help you.
That's great.
I didn't do any ballroom dancing, so but that couple there was great. Passive exercise opportunities everywhere. Once again, we're in the same park, but in a lower section. This guy is 93 years old. I forgot the name of the traditional Chinese instruments played. This guy's singing an opera on the right side. Yeah. What I was going to show you was, this guy is 92 or 93, and he spoke a fair amount of English. When we walked up, our host started interpreting. He said, no, don't want interpretation. So he wanted to speak to us, and he did understand most of what we said. I forget, he was an accountant and a government employee somewhere. I forgot he told me he learned English, but obviously he was excited to have somebody that he could speak to. My wife played the cello at one time in her life, so he offered to let her play. And you can tell she's really good. This is Babe. This is the college student.
People you met on the street, what did they know about Georgia? What was the first thing you said to them, or what was the first thing that they said to you that you understood?
Well, if I had an interpreter with us, that's the only time we had a conversation. You know, we only got to the point that we were from America or the United States. We never got into what part for the most part, unless it was somebody who traveled, like the guy I talked to who said he wanted to talk about New York. You know, he was familiar with that, but most of the time he didn't. Back to the school again, Rockstar again. Oh, one more time. We were in the principal's office, chimes started, and they said, you need to go watch this. Certain times during the day, they do eye exercises. So they were resting their eyes and rubbing, massaging their eyes so they could be concentrating the rest of the day. That's what that's about. This was the principal. You see they prepared for us there. Again, great host. This was her conference room. This was her one of her teachers. Activities outside in the play yard. One of the teachers, they dressed nicely for us that day. All that. Do this. Another market scene, again, don't recommend buying the meat. Another market opportunity. This was in Shenin, and this shows some of the influence from Tibet. This was a convenience store I stopped in, bought some milk in a carton. That's what she's got right there. A little bit of instant coffee, and I forgot what else I bought. You see, you'll recognize Miss Wrigley's gum right there. There's a lot of other things in that store you won't recognize, but this was in the city I told you about. The monks lived. Great lady there to talk to. It's the same place. You can see how they live on the edge of the cliffs. At the end of the day, you always got to remember you are in a communist country. This was a gateway walking into where we stayed and talked. And you see the hammer and sickle. But again, I would say to you, you don't have any sense of being threatened or anything being pressed upon you or the people being oppressed in any kind of way. Never had that. Never had a conversation that would have suggested that. But you do see this every once in a while. This was again the place that we taught. Kids showed up, didn't know these were, but they all liked to have a picture made to be with you. This was the other symbol. You stick a card in, the lights won't work unless it's there, and you see the hammer and sickle being part of that. On the streets again, this guy's a fortune teller. It's amazing to me, the more money you gave him, the better your fortune was.
Yeah.
Why that worked out that way, but that's just weird. And I said to you, you make friends forever. This is Bay. This was, she just graduated from college. She's now in graduate school in Beijing. In fact, she was leaving Nanchang about a month after we were there. But she still was a child in many ways. She was so proud to show us she just bought a new cover for her iPhone. It's the same in every country. iPhones are wonderful. But she really helped us understand the culture. When we walked the streets, I would say, "Hey, tell me what they're doing here." We walked to a place one time and there were photographs of older people out front. I said, "What is this?" She said, "Well, this is a photography place, and he specializes in taking pictures of older people that will be used after they die." And you know, I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't had somebody who lived through the culture. It was just, that's the kind of stuff that intrigued me. And we've continued to email correspondence with her. I think she told me just recently she has an internship or something with IBM, and she may be coming to the States in several months. So, you know, you make those kind of friends hopefully forever. At the end of the day, it's also very tiring. We walked a lot. Teaching is tiring for somebody like me who doesn't do it on any regular basis, but you do have time to do that. And I would say get your rest, because there's a lot to enjoy if you don't miss that opportunity. So that pretty much is my presentation. What sort of things can I answer for you that maybe I didn't touch on? Sorry I didn't have them quite all in order, and I threw this together pretty quickly last night, but that's how I remember it all. So, okay?
Thanks.
Thank you, Alan.